Lesson 5 for October 26 through to November 1, Violating the Spirit of the Law, read by Dr. Percy Harold. Monday, October 28, Against the Spirit of the Law. Question: read Nehemiah chapter 5, verses 6 through to 8, also Exodus 21, verses 2 to 7. Why does Nehemiah react in anger? Nehemiah 5, beginning at verse 6, And I became very angry when I heard their outcry and these words. After serious thought, I rebuked the nobles and rulers and said to them, Each of you is exacting usury from his brother. So I called a great assembly against them, and I said to them, According to our ability, we have redeemed our Jewish brethren who were sold to the nations. Now indeed, will you even sell your brethren, or should they be sold to us? Then they were silenced and found nothing to say. And Exodus chapter 21, verses 2 to 7. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he shall serve 6 years, and in the 7th he shall go out free and pay nothing. If he comes in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master has given him a wife, and she has borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out by himself. But if the servant plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free, then his master shall bring him to the judges. He shall also bring him to the door or to the doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. And if a man sells his daughter to be a female slave, she shall not go out as the male slaves do. However difficult for us to grasp today, slavery was a cultural norm in the ancient world. A parent could either become a slave himself or herself, or sell a child. Socially and legally, the parents had the right to sell their sons and daughters. However, since God is all about giving freedom, he regulated the practice in Israel by requiring creditors to release their slaves every 7 years. Thus, God protected people from becoming permanent slaves and demonstrated his desire for people to live freely. Although lending was permitted by the law, charging interest was not. For biblical regulations against usury, we're going to look at Exodus 22, verses 25 to 27, Leviticus 25, 36 and 37, and Deuteronomy 23, verses 19 and 20. Exodus chapter 22, beginning at verse 25. If you lend money to any of my people who are poor among you, you shall not be like a money lender to him. You shall not charge him interest. If you ever take your neighbour's garment as a pledge, you shall return it to him before the sun goes down. For that is his only covering. It is his garment for his skin. What will he sleep in? And it will be that when he cries to me, I will hear, for I am gracious. And Leviticus 25, beginning at verse 36. Take no usury or interest from him, but fear your God, that your brother may live with you. You shall not lend him your money for usury, nor lend him your food at a profit. And Deuteronomy chapter 23, beginning at verse 19. You shall not charge interest to your brother, interest on money or food or anything that is lent out at interest. To a foreigner you may charge interest, but to your brother you shall not charge interest, that the Lord your God may bless you in all to which you set your hand in the land which you are entering to possess. And yet the interest that the lenders charged was small compared to what the nations around them charged. They were asked to pay 1% every month. Mesopotamian texts from the 7th century show interest of 50% for silver and 100% for grain annually. Thus, the 12% interest per year was low compared to the practice of the countries of Mesopotamia. But overall, according to God's word, the only thing the creditors did wrong was to charge interest, as we read in Nehemiah chapter 5 and verse 10. I also, with my brethren and my servants, am lending them money and grain. Please, let us stop this usury." And interestingly, the people didn't even mention that in their grievance. Everything else was within the social norm as well as within the provisions of the law. So why is Nehemiah very angry? Remarkably, he doesn't act right away, but gives the matter some serious thought. The fact that Nehemiah deals with the issue so decisively is very admirable. He doesn't leave a grievance alone just because it doesn't technically break the law or is socially acceptable, even nice compared to the practices of the land. It was the spirit of the law that was transgressed in this situation. Especially during a time of economic hardship, it was the duty of the people to help each other. God is on the side of the oppressed and needy, and he had to commission prophets to speak against the evils and violence committed against the poor. And so to finish today, what are ways that, even unintentionally, we can follow the letter of the law while violating the spirit behind it? And it says here to see Micah chapter 6 and verse 8. "He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." This week's lesson has been read by Dr. Percy Harold from Queensland, Australia. It is brought to you by Hope Channel, the Sabbath School Department, and through the services of Christian Services for the Blind. A video of this podcast also occurs on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful.